Close your eyes and imagine the year 1220. You are a merchant in the Persian city of Samarkand. One of the most beautiful cities on earth. Minarets catching the morning sun. Markets overflowing with silk, spices, gold. Children running through tiled alleyways. The smell of flatbread baking over open fire. The sound of fountains in the courtyard. Life is good. Life feels permanent. Then someone arrives at the city gate. Bleeding. Barely standing. And they say 3 words that drain the color from every face in the square. The Mongols are coming. You've heard the stories. Everyone has heard the stories. But stories feel like stories, until the horizon starts moving. Until you realize that dust cloud is not a storm. Until you realize it's horses. Tens of thousands of horses. And behind them, the largest military force the medieval world had ever seen. Samarkand, a city of 500,000 people, fell in less than 2 weeks. What came after was not a battle. It was an erasure. To understand what the Mongols were, you have to understand where they came from. The Mongolian steppe is one of the harshest places on earth. Winters that drop to -40 degrees. Summers that scorch everything dry. No trees. No shelter. Just endless, brutal, beautiful grassland stretching to every horizon. The people who lived here weren't soft. They couldn't afford to be. From the moment a Mongol child could walk, they were learning to ride. By age 5, they were on horseback. By 10, they were hunting. By 15, they were warriors. Survival wasn't a goal. It was a daily competition. And for centuries, these tribes fought each other. Constantly. Viciously. In an endless cycle of raids, vendettas, and blood feuds that went back generations. Then one man ended all of it. His birth name was Temujin. He was born into a world that tried to destroy him from the very beginning. His father was poisoned when he was 9 years old. His family was abandoned on the steppe, left to starve. He was captured by enemies and forced to wear a wooden yoke around his neck like an animal. He survived all of it. More than survived, he remembered every single moment. Every humiliation. Every betrayal. Every person who had underestimated him. And one by one, slowly, ruthlessly, he unified the warring Mongol tribes under a single banner. Not through diplomacy alone. Not through charm alone. Through an absolutely unshakable combination of brilliance, brutality, and loyalty. By 1206, the scattered tribes of the steppe had a single leader. They called him Genghis Khan. The universal ruler. The world had absolutely no idea what was coming. The Mongol army was unlike any military force that had come before it. Forget the image of savage barbarians charging blindly into battle. That is not what this was. These were the most disciplined, most mobile, most tactically sophisticated soldiers of the medieval age. An army that communicated across miles of battlefield using signal flags and drums. An army that could ride 100 miles in a single day and still fight at the end of it. An army that studied every enemy before engaging. Sending spies ahead for months, learning weaknesses, mapping cities, identifying traitors. They used psychological warfare with terrifying precision. They would send messengers ahead to a city with a simple message: surrender, and you will be spared. Resist, and nothing will remain. And they meant it. Both promises. Cities that surrendered were often absorbed, protected, their skilled craftsmen and scholars put to work. Cities that resisted were wiped from the earth so completely that archaeologists are still finding the ruins today, buried under centuries of dust and silence. The city of Nishaper resisted. What followed is still almost impossible to comprehend. When the Mongols finished, they didn't just kill the soldiers. They killed everyone. The historians who recorded it, themselves survivors from nearby regions, wrote that the killing took days. That the pyramids of skulls were arranged by category. Men, women, children, even the cats and dogs. Then the Mongols plowed the earth where the city had stood, planted barley over it, as if Nishaper had never existed. This was not random violence. It was a message, delivered to every city that might think about resistance. And it worked. Entire regions surrendered without a single arrow being fired. Fear was a weapon. And the Mongols wielded it like masters. By the time Genghis Khan died, in 1227, under circumstances that remain mysterious to this day, his empire already stretched from the Pacific coast of China to the Caspian Sea. His sons and grandsons kept going. They destroyed the Abbasid Caliphate, the center of the Islamic world for 500 years, in a single campaign. Baghdad, the city they called the Round City, the jewel of the medieval world, was burned so completely that the Tigris River ran black with the ink of its libraries. Think about that. The knowledge contained in those libraries, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, gone. Scholars estimate the destruction set certain fields of science back by centuries. They pushed into Poland, into Hungary, into the heart of Europe itself. Knights who had spent their entire lives training for battle were cut down in open fields by riders who seemed to materialize from thin air, fire arrows with impossible accuracy at full gallop, and disappear before a counterattack could form. Europe genuinely believed the apocalypse had arrived. And then, just when it seemed like nothing could stop them, they stopped. In 1242, the Mongol armies pulled back from the gates of Vienna. Historians have debated why for centuries. Some say the death of the Great Khan in Mongolia triggered a political crisis that forced the generals home. Some point to the terrain. Western Europe's forests and castles didn't suit Mongol cavalry tactics the way open steppe did. Some argue the army had simply stretched too far from its supply lines. The truth is probably all of these things at once. But Europe never forgot. The memory of the Mongol tide lived in European nightmares for generations. Here is the paradox at the heart of the Mongol story. The men who burned Baghdad also commissioned some of the most exquisite art of the medieval period. The descendants of Genghis Khan became patrons of poetry, science, and architecture. Kublai Khan, Genghis's grandson, built the Forbidden City, hosted Marco Polo, oversaw an era of trade along the Silk Road so secure that merchants called it the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace. The most destructive force in medieval history also created one of its most connected economies. How do you hold both of those things at the same time? The Mongols force you to. But empires built on conquest face a problem that conquest alone can't solve. How do you rule people you don't understand? How do you hold together an empire spanning dozens of languages, religions, and cultures when your entire identity is built around movement and war? The Mongols never fully answered that question. Within a century of Genghis Khan's death, his empire had fractured into 4 separate kingdoms, the Khanates, each pulling in different directions. His descendants fought each other with the same ferocity they had once aimed at the world. And then something arrived that no army could fight. The plague. Some historians believe the Mongols themselves, with their vast trade networks crossing every continent, were responsible for carrying the Black Death westward out of Central Asia. Whether or not that's true, the pandemic that swept through the Mongol heartlands in the mid-1300s was catastrophic. Entire communities vanished. Supply lines collapsed. The administrative structures that held the khanates together simply dissolved. The empire didn't fall in a single dramatic moment. It rotted from within. Slowly. Quietly. The way all great things eventually end, not with a bang, but with an absence. Today, Mongolia is a landlocked nation of 3 million people, roughly the population of Chicago. The descendants of the men who once made emperors tremble now herd livestock across the same steppe their ancestors rode out of 800 years ago. The great cities the Mongols built have returned to dust. Karakoram, the capital of the greatest land empire in history, is an archaeological site. Tourists walk quietly through its foundations and try to imagine what once stood there. And across the arc of the former empire, from Beijing to Budapest, you can still find the genetic signature of the Mongol expansion. Researchers estimate that roughly 16 million men alive today carry the Y chromosome of Genghis Khan's direct lineage. 16 million people walking around right now, carrying a piece of the most consequential conqueror in human history. He is gone. But he is everywhere. The Mongols teach us something uncomfortable about civilization. That cities, no matter how magnificent, are fragile. That armies, no matter how unbeatable, eventually face an enemy they cannot charge. And that the things we build, the libraries, the markets, the minarets catching the morning sun, can disappear faster than we ever imagined possible. Samarkand was rebuilt, eventually. Baghdad was rebuilt. Life returned to the places the Mongols had swept through. But the world that existed before Genghis Khan rode out of the steppe was gone forever. Some doors, once closed, never open again. The steppe is quiet now, but if you stand in the right place, at the right hour, and let the wind come in off the grass, you can almost hear the sound of 10,000 horses. And you understand, in your bones, why the world was afraid.